I'm going to start now. We are recording now. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I take immense pleasure and I'm extremely delighted to welcome you to my channel, The High Priestess of Hedonism. Hedonism, as you know, is the pursuit of pleasure. And here on this forum, we are going to talk about some of the most pleasurable things in the world today. The pandemic, as you know, is unprecedented. It is something that most of us have never seen before or experienced. Its magnitude, its reach, its penetration has been immense and devastating all over the world, globally. We're all in it together. But then the human spirit is something which is more resilient. It is unsurpassingly indefatigable. And it has always had the zeal and the really a sense to spring back and get on board, tackle things, get on board, move head on, and move to newer challenges and create a new world. Yet the pandemic has forced us to look at things anew. Our ideas have been, therefore, it has really forced us to look at life in a new form, to find new meanings, it has forced to, turn our long-held notions on their head, and it spun them like a top. New ideas are now beginning to give us pleasure, something that we had relegated to the shelf, something that we had not put enough trust on. They are now beginning to bring us pleasure. Our values, our principles are changing, and all for the good. Family, time, contentment, excellence in our pursuits, and extending ourselves to others will bring us more pleasure, yes, more pleasure than what the kind of things that used to in the past. We will stop running after the more intangible, the more insubstantive, the more short-term and transient things like money. We will be less avaricious and more meaningful and productive, and I guess in the long run, nicer human beings. Today in our chat, we will derive pleasure from learning some of the finest lessons in being wonderful human beings, in being absolutely scintillating professionals, and in being great leaders. And in this pursuit, to give us the finest lessons in life and work, I have with me an absolute icon, a legend in our industry. He has been the former president and CEO of the leading hotels of the world, the giant umbrella affiliate of some of the world's finest hotels. He has been the president and CEO of Wyndham International, which has been one of the gigantic international chain of hotels and resorts with a whopping number of 9,280 hotels. He has also been the president Asia Pacific of Starwood Hotels, which has been the largest hotel company in the world till the time it went on to become even larger after merging with the Marriott. He has in his earlier avatar worked with Disneyland Hotels. I guess he's the one who lent conviviality, geniality, and pleasantness to Disneyland as well. And I make no exaggeration there. Currently, he enjoys shaping young minds, shaping young talents, mentoring the young aspirants from his alma mater, the absolutely resplendent Cornell Hotel School, as also scores of other hotel schools around the world. He is one of the most sought after strategists and visionaries in the tourism industry globally, and he speaks like a dream. But what I like personally about him most is that he's such a pleasant person and so professional. You write to him, he replies. You ask him questions, he asks you, can I even add value? He is so humble. He is the epitome of professionalism and humility, despite being such an icon, a legend really, and a reservoir of knowledge. Like I say, he's the nicest guy out there. He's the coolest guy, and he's the wisest guy. So today we will dip into this reservoir of immense knowledge and talent. Please join me in welcoming the irrepressible TED TENG. Welcome, Ted, to the chat show.
Namaste. Namaste. Thank you so much for those kind words. I hope you can see I'm blushing
You deserve every single word of it. You deserve absolutely everything, that I've said to you. And you're right. This is the way to greet now, isn't it? India, after all, is teaching the world once again. After
Yes.
giving zero to the world, after giving yoga to the world, after giving the sense of spirituality, we are teaching the world to do namaskar. That is the best way to greet now. So, welcome to the show, Ted. I welcome you
Thank you.
to the forum of the High Priestess of Hedonism. I hear that you were driving right now from Chicago to New York for Ithaca, and finally to
I drove from Texas, from Dallas to Ithaca, New York.
yes,
My primary residence is in Texas, but I have a house here on the lake near Cornell University, and all summer I have not been able to get up here. So rather than flying, my wife and we drove. I drove, and it's 1,500 miles. What is that? That is 2,500 kilometers.
wow.
Um, so it took 2 days, about 24 hours of total trip, but it was okay. I've done this many times, and the highways are very good. So it was an enjoyable ride.
And how was your experience? You've done it before, but now with the pandemic, really hitting us hard and changing the way we are reacting to life and to our workspaces. How was the driving such a long distance? What challenges?
It's fine, because the things you have to do is, of course, you have to refill gas, you have to go to the bathroom, get something to eat, and then stay overnight. And all those, you can be pretty careful. Gas station is not a problem, because you're pretty, a lot of distances. Um, you know, buying food, it's basically, it's a drive-through, very little contact. Um, the only thing we didn't know about was the hotel stay, and we stayed at a Hilton Garden Inn, and very efficient. Hilton has this clean stay promise, and with the sticker on the door and all. And we went in, we wiped down everything. It was fine. It really, because you're not really in contact with a lot of people. It felt pretty safe.
It was safe as well.
Yeah.
So I'm going to ask you, what is the real impact of coronavirus that you see on the world at large? What is your reading of the analysis of the situation, and what do you see on ground level?
Well, big picture, the travel industry obviously has been devastated, as you said, in terms of the reach and global, for the past 6 months, and probably I would say months to come, and hopefully not years to come. And when I'm talking about airlines, hotels, restaurants, cruises, car rental, travel agency, destination companies, and all the supporting industry, are all suffering, badly. I would say destinations, particularly like Las Vegas, Orlando, and Hawaii, they're especially hard hit because it's their primary, economic engine. Um, and I would say the hardest hit people are the employees of these industries with very little safety net. I don't see, personally, I don't see how the US unemployment rate is only 10%, right? And, it's probably more like 20%, and the travel industry is more like 40 to 50% unemployed. Now, the good news is some countries are already recovering, such as China, but the US is not there. I mean, this is more of a management issue than the virus. Um, but if Americans are not traveling abroad, then everybody is impacted. Americans, do travel, and so that's sort of the macro level. The real hurt to me is at home, right? If employees, if they lost their jobs, if they're facing evictions from their homes because they can't pay the mortgage, they can't pay the rent,
Correct.
if they have to work but no one's taking care of the children, or if they go to work, and they're taking a risk of bringing the virus home to their family members. To me, that's the real impact of the coronavirus, and more importantly, how it is being managed by the government. We hear a lot of statistics and all of that, but the the real impact is at home.
And it's really tentacular. You're right. It's really deep, and it is very it's very scary. The statistics that are being thrown up at us, that the industry, the world economy at large, and the industry in particular will begin to bounce back only by 2024. I read somewhere that that's when the travel, the airline businesses, begin to spring back around that time. The loss is, in terms of percentages, about 70% of job losses the industry is, staring at. The figure is getting into trillions of, really number, huge $1 million of, losses worldwide. And it is, you're right, one of the worst hit industries. But we have in our, over the generations, we've seen some absolutely profound crisis in the past. There has been the Great Depression, there have been world wars, there have been famines, there have been other sort of, viral attacks such as this. Um, how does, this compare to the acute crisis of the past, Ted?
Well, in my 40-year career, and I've been through the OPEC oil crisis in the 70s, Black Monday, stock market crash, 9/11 Gulf War, the Asian financial crisis. I was in Asia, and then more recently the Great Recession. And in my experience, nothing has been this global, this widespread. I mean, I almost venture to characterize this is like taking all the crises that I've experienced combined.
Yes.
Because it is worldwide, it is deep, and we don't even know when this may end. We are all hoping it will end soon, but we really don't know.
Absolutely, absolutely. And what efforts do you see the industry really making to counter this looming threat and the challenges therein?
Well, I think from a guest perspective, the industry is reacting to the sort of with short-term fixes, right? Distancing, cleaning, low contact, all of these practices has been put in place. And, these are fixes that will allow for some business activities to return. And that's good. But these are not obviously long-term fixes. 6 feet apart doesn't really work in restaurants. And this trip driving up to Ithaca, I experienced staying at a hotel. It's reasonably safe in my mind. However, to me, this is a health crisis, right? And it's going to require a health solution. Our industry is not going to fix this pandemic. Now we're making it safer for those who have to travel. However, we're not really bringing back the discretionary travel yet. And the term discretionary, changes depending on the situation. Now, that's from a guest perspective. From an employee standpoint, I think we have been exposed. We have been shown, or at least the hotel owners and to some extent operators, that employees don't matter as much as preserving capital. Now, maybe that's always been the case, and we just don't hear it. But in this crisis, it's really shown up. Now, I would say, out of all the difficult decisions, there is a notable exception, and that's the Dorchester collection, which kept all of their employees on at full pay during the pandemic. And they are to be applauded because they see their employees as long-term assets for their business. And I think that's a great example to set.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yet, despite the risk factor, which is extremely high, the vaccine is nowhere in sight. At least for now. I read somewhere that about 194 vaccines are being worked on as we speak. But by the
Yep.
time they get put out of the factories, first out of the laboratories, onto the factories, out of there onto the counter shelves in pharmaceutical companies, and on in medical shops, it's going to be a long while. Well, the good thing also is that if the numbers are increasing. For example, in India, the latest report is 80,000 fresh cases every day. In Delhi, about 2,000 fresh cases every day, and it's only increasing. And I think it's happening all over the world as well. Some places may have seen a bit of gestation and are on a decline, but otherwise it's really unabated at this point of time. But given all this, people are still taking risks. People are still being foolhardy. People are being still nonsensical about the way they're conducting. Earlier on, about a couple of months back, we heard that people were wanting to picnic in the Central Park. People are going out, to the malls, crowding places. People are averse to wearing masks, and they say that you can't be cautious enough. What is it that you see in people and industries around? What is your analysis? Are people taking it seriously finally or not?
I think it's a mixed answer, and then it changes over time. I think early on, most people took it seriously. And then with some of the political rhetorics and mixed messaging, it starts to divide. I think that's part of our challenge at this time. In the past, when there are global crises, we seem to come together, and even national crisis. And today we're not. The other part of it is what I've seen in the U.S. is that we tend to go in waves, right? March, April, we were really worried, and then when people started practicing safer distancing and mask and all of that, came the Memorial Day weekend in a holiday in the U.S. And people went to beaches, people gathered, socialized. Of course, the cases shot up. And then people be a little bit more careful. And then came July 4th weekend. It seems like, it gets better, people relax, it gets worse, people are more careful, and it gets better. So it's been like a wave for every month, 2 months. And in the US, what we're facing today now is we have another holiday coming up, the Labor Day weekend, next Monday, and then the schools are restarting. And so, the expectation is by the second half of September, we're going to have another wave.
Yes.
So I wish we would all be disciplined and just lock ourselves down for 2 months, right? And just grin and bear it. Of course, no one likes to be locked in and all that, but quite frankly, it really isn't that bad if you are able to do that. The going to beaches, the partying, and all of that, to me is just reckless. And so I think it's a mixed answer as to whether some people are taking it very seriously and some people are not, and then it also changes over time.
But Ted, you just said that the best resort is to lock yourselves up and one, be conscious about your own health and also about not infecting the other person. You have a huge responsibility in being responsible, for the environment around you. You can't take things lightly, even for others. If you are an asymptomatic person, or if you're a carrier, or if you've been infected, you can't. You have to be extremely diligent about how you conduct yourself, around much more now. At the same time, hotels have been opening in the US and other parts of the world. In India, they've just, begun to reopen. How do you maintain that then? The hotels are opening. There's going to be a huge gap. One, they have not been they've been hit hard business wise. Their funds have been hitting rock bottom, and now with their opening up, the overheads are going to be high. They will be with less footfalls happening coming to the hotels. Yet they will be running the hotels almost full steam where resources go. So how do hoteliers try and keep a check on that?
Well, I think, yeah, I think hotel business is a long-term business. We know that operating year round, right? Some months are better than others. Some months we're going to, lose money, and then other months we're going to make a lot of money.
Right.
Similar to retail industry, in the U.S., the retail industry make all their money in the last 2 months of the year. Throughout the year, they're not making money, but they don't close their stores because they're not making money in those months. And I think for our industry, we have to look at it and say, what if we looked at our P&Ls on a 5-year, 10-year basis? What decisions will we be making that's best for our business? I'm not advocating people should run their business and lose money. I'm just asking people to take a look at it and say, what would you do if you were looking at your business on a 5-year, 10-year basis rather than each month of this year? I think the segment that's reopening now are more of the economy, the mid-scale hotels where the overhead is quite low. Some of the city hotels, some of the convention hotels, simply doesn't make any sense for them to open right now. If you look at by segment, leisure is probably returning a little bit faster. Corporate travel, the individual corporate travelers, they're not traveling. There's no one in the office to go see. And then, of course, convention and meetings, that's been a segment that has been hurt quite a bit because people are not gathering. So I do think hotels are reopening case by case, market by market, segment by segment as to what makes sense for them. The hotel that I stayed at, the Hilton Garden Inn, they said they were running 50% occupancy.
They were already.
Yeah, and now, there is something that I think we got to be careful about the numbers, because with Smith Travel reporting, and rightfully so, they only report hotels that are operating. They do not report hotels that are not operating. So if that's the case, the demand is really not back at 50% occupancy. If you factor in the inventory that's actually available, but maybe not operating. So I think we still have a ways to go yet.
Okay. And, in your experience with some of the finest hotels, having seen some of the worst crises, yes, hotels are doing what they can in terms of sanitizing, in terms of super powerful cleaning, in terms of, social distancing, in terms of coverage with PPEs or masks, in terms of being absolutely contactless where they can be, which is a very difficult thing for an industry, which is a very people-oriented industry such as ours. What are the top 5 or 6 points that you enumerate as the operational best practices that the hotels can, adopt?
Well, I think the big hotel companies like Marriott and Hilton and Four Seasons, all the big brands, I think they're doing well with their practices about the way they clean, the way they keep distances, and all of that, and also the way they rearrange space to be dining outside, and all of that I think is great. But I do think that the biggest challenge for a lot of the big brands is to get the franchisees full compliance.
Yes.
Right? Because now it's not like, 80% is okay, 75%, 90%. This is really, you really got to get everybody doing the same thing all the time, right? I do think every crisis exposes some cracks in business models. And this crisis, I think, is showing us that perhaps the franchising model is riskier to the brands than previously thought. I think everybody understood there's risk to the brand, but how much risk? I'm not suggesting every hotel, must be owned and operated by the brands. I'm not saying that at all. I mean, if you look at running shoes, Nike, right? They don't sell all their shoes. They rely on the distribution. But in physical products, they're subject to inspections at every stage of the production and distribution. Service products, on the other hand, they're created at the time that it's consumed. So there's no time element to inspect, right? So, I hate to say this, but in our industry, there's been a practice of letting our customers be the inspectors, because they'll fill out satisfaction forms and they'll tell us if something's wrong. Well, that's a really flawed model. We should not be, letting our customers down. We should be the one that knows which hotels are truly complying with our standards. So to answer your question, I think best practice, it's pretty common out there, but I do think the risk in a franchising model, which the industry, most hotels in the industry is a franchise. This is not to say all franchisees are bad. I'm saying there are a lot of franchisees that actually builds the brand, but I do believe there are some franchisees who are willing to sin on the brand. Let's put it that way.
And tell me, Ted, you're talking about the franchising concept. Will the chains get more affected in the pandemic than, say, single unit hotels or independent hotels?
I don't think so. I think there's a talk out there, and the chain brands have always touted they are better marketing machines than the independent. I think it depends on the stage of the product life, right? When I was with leading hotels, some of the hotels have more recognizable brands with their customers, maybe not with all people, but with their customers than Marriott has with its own. So I don't think it's an easy comparison. I think if you are starting out as a new hotel, as an independent brand, where no one knows you, then I think you are at a greater risk than having a chain brand. But if you're well-established independent brand, there's always this term of branded, not branded. And I always correct people, no, it's not branded or not branded. It's chain branded or individually branded, So, and I think it really depends on the market, on where your customers are coming from. And do you have repeat customers? Do you get customers from word of mouth? Or you are strictly relying on people doing a search when they need to go somewhere. So,
I see a silver lining in all of this, really. We all are facing tough times to varying degrees in our, spaces, in our work. Yet there is a silver lining. There could be golden words spoken too soon, or maybe not. But I feel that, a lot of us of the present generation, from the millennial, of the previous generation, like you said, have, faced this pandemic of this kind of enormity like nothing else before. So this is going to really train us and equip us in handling anything that the nature or the world or the turn of events has to throw at us in a much better fashion. Personally, work-wise, we've been far more equipped, far more strapped well to handle such challenges in the future. God forbid there should not be such things happening again. But should they be? Because, world is evolving. We are, impacting the world in absolutely abysmal ways. But we'll be better, prepared to handle it, and maybe more conscientious in taking care of the nature alongside, our life journey as well. Do you see that happening? Do you see that shift in mindset happening in people, in professionals, in companies?
Absolutely, absolutely. I think adversity are better teachers than prosperity, because it's easy to make it in prosperity, whereas when you face adversity, you have to be more creative, innovative. When you don't have resource, you have to be more resourceful. I talked to a lot of students at Cornell and recently did a webinar with the recent graduates. They have faced 10 good years, or half of their adulthood, or half of their life, actually, pretty much all their adulthood, in very, very good times. Now, all of a sudden, they graduate and the job offers they thought they had got rescinded, and they don't know what to do. Now, so many of them say, okay, if I can't do what I thought I was going to do, I'm going to do these alternative things. And, it is wonderful to see how resourceful they are. And I think, every crisis is tough. And I know there are people who are sort of sitting around waiting for this to be over, which is a terrible way to live through crisis. Yes, it's tough, but find ways to do things that you couldn't have done otherwise. Enjoy the time with your families, and read and learn. And there is, I'm not saying crises are easy, but I'm saying take advantage of the crisis, and to the young ones, expect crisis every 8 to 10 years. Hopefully not as big of a scale as this one is. I mean, if you think back, we have had crisis all the way, but usually it involves certain pockets of the world and certain segments, and not stopping everything.
Very well said. Very well said indeed. Expect the crisis, anticipate it, be ready, have the right skill set, have the absolutely right mindset to tackle it, yet embrace life.
Absolutely.
Find
Absolutely.
new meaning, find new purpose, and I guess, lend yourself to life at large, and have a more profound meaning to what your entity is, and what you can give to the world as payback, because we all have to pay back to the society, to the world at large, to nature, in terms of what we take from it all the time, incessantly, greedily, every time, every day. No, very well said. And you're right, now companies are going to be, they may already be busy writing manuals, writing crisis manuals, writing operational manuals. In the midst of all this, how do you think the employees, which is the finest, best, strongest resource that the hotels and the industry has, how can they be motivated, attuned, and trained to keep the company afloat and to wade through the crisis period?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I think employees are already highly motivated. They want to work.
Yes.
They are willing to risk their health to come to work, because by and large, our industry, our employees need to work.
Correct.
There are many, if not most, are living from paycheck to paycheck. They can't afford not to have a paycheck. So, I think the fundamentals of distancing and cleaning, they're fairly straightforward. And that's very trainable, and they're doing that at home also, right? The harder part, I think, is how to make each person, each guest feel safe, right? Because our sense of safety is very different. Same circumstances, you may feel safe, I may not. and it could be, in reverse as well. So our employees it really has to be really present to the one single guest in front of them as to how that person is feeling, what messages are they sending with their body language, with their choice of words, all of that, so that, if you see them head move back off, they clearly don't feel comfortable with that distance, right? If you hand them a pen and they hesitate to pick it up, that's a message that they don't feel comfortable touching that. One thing staying at the Hilton Garden Inn, by the way, I don't own stock in Hilton. I think hotels should do is leave a package of wipes in the room, because it's giving the guests a sense of control.
Yes.
Because this is critical in these times, is they have control. And if they have wipes in the room, the guests can wipe down everything that they're going to touch. So they feel they're in control, they feel safe. The sticker on the door is nice, but it's not a great assurance. It's one thing I would recommend all hotel rooms, maybe even all restaurants, in terms of at the table, is just a package of wipes, disinfecting wipes.
Absolutely. No, see, it's a simple but very well thought out suggestion that you're bringing to the table. Companies may not even think about it really, but the moment you provide something like wipes or something to do with personal hygiene, or to increase their confidence in maintaining their safety, I think that also augurs for customer loyalty, because they know that the company cares for you and for your well-being. So no, absolutely well said, Ted. No, that's so right. And that brings me to the other question, that beyond the more obvious things, what else can the hotels or the companies do to increase guest confidence? They're talking about, they're not necessarily buzzwords, they're the new strategies that hotels and companies are coming up with things like vacations and staycations, and bringing the hotel or the restaurant to you with their do-it-yourself kits, etc. What else can the companies do to really bring the guests back to the fore, to make them increase the confidence in your brand?
Yeah, again, follow up on the previous question. I think we as hotel operators, we have to be transparent.
Yes.
We have to be authentic, right?
Yes.
And we have to, we shouldn't make promises that we don't know we can keep or not. And I think the important thing is, tell people what we are doing. Don't tell them it's safe. Tell them what we are doing, and let them determine if they feel safe, because we don't know what their sense of safety is. Everybody's sense of safety is different, and our circumstances may be different. If I have an immunity compromised system, then my sense of safety may be very different from someone who may not have any issues.
Right.
And if the guests, if they don't have confidence in what we're doing, don't force it. Let it be. And of course, I know the temptation is to reassure, right? Because we want to tell people we've done everything we know how to do, but we shouldn't reassure, because that only they can decide for themselves. And quite frankly, we don't know for sure it's absolutely safe, right? There's a lot of things we don't know about this particular virus. And I think the simple rule to operate by is put people ahead of business. And, there's so much we don't know, but if we follow this fundamental, when in doubt, put people ahead of business.
I think that's one of the finest things that you have said. not just for present times, but all future times. Ladies and gentlemen, the very wise words spoken by Ted Teng: put people ahead of business. Once you do that, business will always follow, profits will follow. If you take care of your
Absolutely.
customers, and more importantly, if you take care of your internal customers, your companies will thrive. So put people ahead of business. Absolutely fantastic, word spoken, Ted. I completely agree wholeheartedly with you. Now I'm going to ask you to, look at your crystal ball and give me a sort of mapping in terms of when do you think it's a very hazy question out in the air, but yet I would like you to, try and tell us when do you think the industries are going to, spring back, pick up momentum, get back on the road to recovery.
Well, I wish I knew, but the way I read the leaves is, well, we've already started to improve from the bottom of April, right? I mean, that was absolutely bottom, but that's not recovery at this point. This is just resuming some activities and serving the essential travelers, people who have to travel. So I don't see a full momentum until a proven vaccine is distributed. As you said, there's 190 some odd vaccines being tested right now. The good news about the vaccine is that we don't need a high number of people, like 80% vaccinated, for this to be effective. My understanding is if we get 30 to 60% of people vaccinated, it would substantially cut down the transmission. So, because I know many just won't take the vaccine because it really is not proven, and it has risk as well. As much as they're doing human tests and all that, we just don't know. Most vaccine takes years to develop. So my guess is if a vaccine started distribution in January of 2021. And that's a possibility right now based on what I'm reading.
Yes.
Then I think we'll see momentum, right? Momentum probably in the second half of 2021. And maybe back to 90% of 2019 by 2023. If we are really lucky, 2022, but really I'm looking at 2023 as possibly getting back to about 90% of what we had in 2019. Now, I do think different segments will have different recovery pace, right? The short distance leisure will recover faster than the long distance leisure. The corporate travel will take much longer because offices are not open. But this segment can then probably have the fastest change in recovery. Because if offices decide to open, they can open tomorrow, and the corporate travel, I think, will come back. The most interesting to me is the meetings and convention business.
Yes.
I am convinced that they will recover to a stronger level than ever before.
I see.
Right? The reason is hybrid meetings. Now, hybrid meetings means both in person and simultaneously online. For the longest time, the convention segment, we resisted virtual meetings because it will cannibalize the in-person attendance, right? So the live stream, sometimes when we do it, it's really a second thought, and it's not really well done, right? And because we're really focusing on the in-person attendance. However, through this pandemic, the segment has learned that the power of virtual meetings, you can engage so many more people, going from 3,000 attendance to 30,000 in attendance. It is 10x, right? So now they discovered this, they're going to create hybrid meetings for both in-person and online. And they're going to substantially use much better technology, and the presentations will change. what they've learned is that people still want to be in person, maybe not all the time. The cannibalization of in-person attendance, if there is any, is completely offset by the vast number of people they can reach online and have a high level of engagement. So I'm very positive about the meetings and conventions segment. And the other thing about this segment is that people say, oh, you know, the meetings and convention, you got to book 4 or 5 years in advance. Well, they're already booked, right? The meetings for 2021, 22, 23, 24 is already on the books. It's just a matter of when do they pull the trigger to decide whether they cancel or not. And if everything's working out well, vaccine is distributed and everybody's back to travel, the meetings and conventions won't be canceled, let's say in 2021, and certainly 2022 and 23. They're already booked. So it's not going to take the lag time to bring them back. And I watched the CVAN Connect this year. And it's just really, really powerful if we put our minds to doing something that we have never done before. And I think the technology really enables that.
Sure, so absolutely. I quite agree with you there. I also feel that the two biggest saviors for us from now on are going to be, one, technology, because we're beginning to use technology in ways that we've never even seen it in the light of in conducting our personal and professional lives. And number two, it's going to be going back to the traditional values of goodness and niceness and kindness and really being nicer people. I feel those two things are going to be savior for humankind from hence on. So in your mentoring role, I know that you guide and you lead and you shape young minds from the industry, from the world at large. What are the basic mantras you'd like to give to the aspiring young ones in how should they look at life and look at work and look at the world at large from now on?
Well, in the U.S., recent events have really surfaced a lot of injustice and inequality.
Yes.
Right? It's always been there, but the recent events have highlighted and shine a light on this. And in many respects, it has brought out goodness in people because they said, that's not who we are. That's not what we want to stand for. And came out speaking. One of the lessons I learned, there was a convention where the president of NAACP was speaking, and he said, someone asked the sage, when will there be justice? And the sage said, there will be justice when those not injured are just as indignant as those injured. And I think, there's always inequalities around the world, and it's not just for the people who suffer to fight for themselves. It's the people who are not suffering, reaching out with a hand and pull those people up. That's the goodness, in the world. There's a lot of conversation about social injustice and all of that. And the conversations that I've had with people involves 3 questions. What kind of person do you want to be? What kind of organizations do you want to lead? And then what commitments do you want to make? When it comes to persons, I sort of look at there are those who are racist, they hate other races for no other reason, and they're negative, so we put them aside. There are those who are non-racist. They don't think they're better, they don't hate other people, so they're neutral. Then there are those who are anti-racist. they fight against those who are racist, and they offset the negative, right? They keep things from getting worse. And so in some sense, that basically puts us at status quo. And then there are those who are active includers. These are people who reach out to people, all walks of life. People don't look like them, have the same life experience, because they want to meet different people. And they value the diversity as a strategic advantage. And those are the people who are truly going to make progress, right? So from racist to non-racist to anti-racist to active includers. And I ask people, well, what do you want to be? And then when it comes to organizations and diversity and racism, first there are three kinds of organizations I look at. There are those organizations who do not want to look bad, have bad publicity. So they'll put out generic statements, they'll do things that make them look good, but they're not really interested in being inclusive or having diverse people in their organization. They just want to protect their current customers, right? Their market share there. The second type of companies says, hey, green is everybody's color. Let's tap into all the markets we can. They're out there for market share. They're out there for revenue. They're not really interested in diversity. They're more interested in the revenue. Now, that's fine. They'll make some progress because they'll develop products and relationship with the various markets. And then the third type is that they see diversity as a strategic advantage. Companies who are diverse with people from different walks of life, life experiences, different perspectives. Companies are more innovative. They're more creative. They solve problems differently rather than thinking alike. That is the level that I think diversity has the opportunity to be at, right? So again, I ask people, what kind of organization do you want to lead? And then lastly is, what's the commitment? In commitments, I see people who make an intentions commitment, people who make a commitment to action, and then people who make commitments to results. Intention is, yes, I believe, I will follow, I will walk in that direction. Not a very strong commitment. Actions is probably what most of our industries are accustomed to. We will do this, we will do that. Committed. Well, what if the actions do not produce the results that you want? Well, we tried. And lastly, people who commit to results. Of course, things don't always work. Knowing that, we'll have plan Bs. We'll have a backup plan. We have milestones to mark our progress. We ask ourselves constantly, what if this doesn't work? What would I do differently, right? So the commitment is to produce the result. And that's the most powerful commitment that we can make. I think the world, based on, I'm 64 years old. I've lived a wonderful life and lots of different experiences, ups and downs. But overall, it's a wonderful place to be. It could be a transitory passage, but it's a wonderful place to live, and it's worth living. And when we contribute to the well-being of others, it's rewarding for us. And I think that's one of the biggest opportunities for business, is that we, running a business well, actually enriches lives.
Absolutely. I take two major takeaways from what you said just now. The first is that, inclusiveness, respect to the others, inclusiveness. About 2 decades back, Ted, I used to work with the Australians at the diplomatic mission in Delhi. And about 20 years back, we were already talking about multiculturalism, about respecting the elders of our society, about giving respect to Aboriginals, and that I think mindset is applicable to everybody, in any part of the world. You talked about race, so really being respectful towards diverse people, to really recognizing and respecting diversity, because that's what humanness is all about. It cannot be
It
me,
is.
me and myself, it should not be like that. And I think that has been the Achilles heel of the human life and the human progression or digression, because we have been too self-centered, too myopic, too sort of, looking into our very narrow communities. And the time is now not to be like that at all.
I mean, at the end of the day, we enjoy travel, right? Why do we travel? So we can learn about what we have in common and how we are different from
I,
other parts of the world. We have so much in common, love of family and friends, enjoying good meals, socializing and learning. So, these are all sort of basic human instincts that we all have. And we share so much more in common than we are just different.
and I so completely agree with that. And my second takeaway from what you said was that, and it is said about a normal thing as well, is that the bigger offender is somebody who stands on the sideline and watches and does nothing. You just mentioned something about that. And if we do not, extend ourselves, if we do not lend a voice, if we don't lend our opinion, if we don't reach out to make a difference, we are the bigger offenders than the one who suffers. So people who have the wherewithal have to take that onus and move on and make a difference, create an impact, help out. That was the second takeaway I had from what you just said.
History have taught us being silent is complicit, right? When you see wrongs, we all know it. We all know instinctively, we know when we see something is not right. And when we are silent, then we are complicit. Maybe it's not as bad as those committing those terrible acts, but being silent, we are in essence supporting. There's a phrase I've heard: neutrality favors the oppressors, and that's very true. But it's a choice. It's a choice we make as to what type of person we want to be. And quite frankly, as human beings, in spite of our fears and all of that, we are at our best when we are championing causes that serves other people well.
Absolutely. Ted, I read somewhere that are we running short of time? Okay, we have a Zoom time dagger on our head. I read somewhere that I heard Oprah say a long time back that you don't need money to be charitable. And there is this famous author who's the richest in the world, J.K. Rowling, who is forever, extending herself, giving away charities, being philanthropic, and really, feeling for people regardless of what plan she is on in the sweepstakes of affluence, in the wealth stakes, really. So in terms of companies, to be inclusive, to be philanthropic, to meet their CSR goals, what can companies do to support the communities they exist in?
Well, I'm not a big fan of the corporate social responsibilities as a separate agenda, okay? I believe a business running well includes contributions to the community, and not, as economists will call, externalizing the cost of the business, right? We all know serving customers well is a part of the business. That's well understood. When a business is run well, it creates and sustains employment. Employment for most people around the world is how they get to live their lives. When a business is run well, there's a fair return to the investors. So their hard-earned capital is protected and it grows, right? In terms of the community, when employees are employed, they spend money in the community. A business buys supplies and services from the community. So running a business well represents all those things that quite often talked about in corporate social responsibility. I just think that should be a given in running a business. My challenge with some businesses sees creating a separate department for corporate social responsibility is that, oh, okay, so everybody else can sin, but here is where you go to pray. You know, that's not how it works. We can't separate the business, you know, that way. Companies that pollute, right? They're not paying for the cost that they generate when they run a business. That's externalizing their cost of running business. Companies that lay off employees, causing unemployment and you know, and financial difficulties in the community, that's not running a business well, right? So I sort of look at that and I say, you know, run a business well, run a business conscionably, you know, run a business with caring and love, and businesses can be such a blessing to a community rather than, so unfortunately, some businesses do take advantage of the community. But if businesses are operated well, a lot of people benefit.
Ted, I have been, so pleased, so happy, so delighted with our conversation. And I'm sure our listeners would be absolutely amazing. Some fantastic words of wisdom that you have spoken so candidly, so naturally, so effortlessly. And that's the crux, ladies and gentlemen. If you have any more questions, if you have pointers to learn, if you want to ask some more specific questions of Ted, do let us know and we will come back for a chat again, for you. Meanwhile, this is what hedonism is. In the truest essence, in the truest meaning. It goes beyond what is obvious. It goes beyond the basic desires. It reaches up to the level of aspiring to being absolutely superlative in terms of human beings, in terms of leaders in your own spheres, in terms of being professionals. And that truly brings the biggest pleasure to you, to your core, to your mind, to your heart. And that is what hedonism is all about. I thank Ted from the deepest of my heart for all his time, for all his acumen, his wisdom, his knowledge. And such a pleasure it has been talking to you. Thank you, Ted.
Thank you.
We will meet again. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure speaking with you. And even though we're half a world apart.
It does not matter really. The minds
really?
meet, the mindsets meet. And yeah, you're right. We're talking from across the pond, as they say, but much closer thanks to technology, thanks to a common philosophy of humanness and humanity. So be safe, ladies and gentlemen. Be good, make a difference, and rise above your own.
Namaste.
Namaskar.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Take care.